I'm Amanda Lee Smith. This is My Best Campaign. There seems to be this unspoken rule for content creators that as soon as you reach a certain number of followers, you have to launch a product. They're selling coffee, cosmetics, activewear, chocolate, and more often than not, they're just slapping the creator's name onto a product developed by some global team. But that is not the case with Ayo. It's a line of chunky, rich mayo developed by former Bon Appetit editor and cookbook author Molly Baz. And today I'm talking to Avery Hairston, the VP of Marketing at Ayo. There are two things that Avery probably knows better than most. The first is how to scale a nascent CPG brand, and the second is how to build a creator-led brand. He was the very first employee at Banza, the gluten-free chickpea pasta brand you now see literally everywhere, and he was the VP of Marketing at W, a brand founded by one of the internet's most famous personalities, Jake Paul. Avery is doing both of these things now at Ayo and has some incredible advice on how brands can grow organically by taking best practices from creators. In this episode, we talked about when creator-led brands should dial the founder story up or down, and the idea of escape velocity, when the brand can stand on its own without the creator. I caught up with Avery shortly after Ayo launched in Targets across the U.S. Okay, Avery, let's dive in right to this, the tasty part. Let's do it. Tell me, what is Ayo and what's your role there?
Yeah, Ayo is the world's most craveable mayo. Our sauces are packed with fresh ingredients like pickled veggies, peppers, herbs, mustard seeds. We're just really in an effort to deliver deli-level flavor and texture. So we've got super bold flavors. We've got dill pickle mayo, we've got hot giardiniera, miso mayo. They're all lights out on a sandwich. I brought, just so you can see.
Nice.
There you go.
It jumps off the shelf. I'm not going to lie. Like, I see it in my Whole Foods when I'm down in Portland where I live half time, and it's hard not to grab it.
Yeah. No, the design is awesome. I can't take any credit for it. I joined the team right after they launched. The design work on the packaging, which was done by Center, is just incredible.
My team was actually talking about it this morning. They were wondering who did it. So good shout out. And y'all just launched in Target. What does a rollout like that look like from a marketing standpoint? Yeah,
so, big retail launches are, I would say, always just super multifaceted when it comes to marketing. There's so many different channels in the marketing mix today, and it's hard to keep track of everything. Like, I like to think about things in kind of 4 core areas: owned, earned, paid, and shopper, just to help myself, keep it all in my mind. For a launch like Target, I would say, that's one of those moments where all the different areas need to be firing at once.
Yeah.
So from an owned perspective, you've got organic social, you've got email marketing. From an earned perspective, there's influencer collaborations, there's sort of traditional earned media like press. And then there's paid channels. We're, running meta ads that drive traffic to store. We're spending on Target.com. There's a whole host of sort of other paid retail-focused marketing channels like Ibotta and Instacart. There's definitely some ad dollars at play. And then I think most importantly, the shopper piece. Target brought us in on display, which is huge for a new brand like ours.
Yeah.
Gave us the opportunity to just, tell our story at shelf in a way that a lot of young brands kind of get lost. You don't get to, have that messaging at shelf normally. You're just kind of relying on the front face of the pack. But we actually got this 4-shelf display, and we got to install our own sort of cardboard, full branded experience, which was amazing, and just allowed us to have a lot more presence at shelf and, make the brand feel bigger than it is. We're just a year old. So, but yeah, it's the mix of those 4 areas, each of which have, about a dozen sort of sub-tactics within it. So it's a bit of herding cats is probably not the right analogy, but just juggling a lot of balls, I guess.
Yeah. Paint a picture for me of that retail display. So you said multiple shelves, you got this cardboard cutout. How do you maximize your impact in a location like that?
So you start out, I wish I actually had it in my house, one of the mock-ups that we approved before we ran to print, but I don't have it anymore. But yeah, there's, some set guidelines that Target gives you around how much space you can take up. And that's kind of the brief, is like you've got, 36 inches by a foot and a half by a foot of just space to take up. And then you have to consider, how much product you want on shelf and the weight of that product. And there's a lot of not sexy stuff that gets into teeing up the sort of framework within which you can actually do great design work. So
yeah. Is it a storytelling moment or is it just like a splash?
Yeah, so totally. I think after all that's sort of ironed out, right, then you're like, what do we say on the sort of one headboard and 4 little shelves that we have? And so for us, I think one big piece of it was just statement of identity, right? This is like when you look at it from afar, like, what is this? And so Mayo Gone Wild was a big piece of copy on there. And then what are sort of the points of difference for our brand? And for us, the fresh ingredient mix-ins that deliver the flavor and texture. Like most mayonnaise is plain.
This is a chunky mayo that you guys have.
This is a chunky mayo, and the flavor is derived from those real ingredients chopped up in there. So we've got those pickles, those herbs, and you can see it in the mayo.
I've heard you talk about a big nozzle on this thing.
Yeah, big nozzle. That's point of pride for us. So that's another thing that we call out, right, is the fresh ingredient mix-ins, and then use cases. So slather, dip, dunk, sort of just tell the customer how to think about this product, right? You can put it on a sandwich, but you can also use it as a marinade. You can also use it as a dip. So trying to pack all that messaging and our big logo into one display. So shout out to our design team for trying to fit all that we want from a shopper perspective into tiny little shelves at retail is the challenge. But yeah, that's kind of how we think about the storytelling, is what it is, why it's better, how to use it.
Yeah. The thing I didn't hear you mention, which could have been very deliberate, but is, we have to call out, is AO is a creator-led brand. It was founded by a chef who's has some notoriety online and has some brilliant cookbooks, which I actually have right here beside me.
Yeah.
Molly Baz. I didn't hear you say anything about having her face, her name, anything like that associated with that. And I think we're going to talk more about it, but talk to me about the decision to not include her in the storytelling.
Great question. Molly is so core to our brand. And I think with creator brands in general, which I'm sure we'll touch on, they are fundamental to the storytelling in that first year, especially. I think what's interesting with Molly that makes her super unique in the context of creator-led brands is she's also a professional when it comes to recipe development. She's a cookbook author. So she's essentially our head of product in the weeds on product every day. And then she's also got such a sense for content and brand. So she's kind of like our chief brand officer as well. And very in the weeds, which you just don't get from your normal sort of celebrity founded business, is actually a pro in the space that is working on the business every single day.
Yeah, she truly knows the product. It's not just she had a brand and so she decided to tag a product onto it. It's this is a product that she developed, lives and breathes.
Yeah, and I think, there are moments where we dial up Molly's involvement, and then there are moments where the brand kind of needs to stand on its own. And I think mass market, there's so many shoppers that run through 2,000 plus Target stores. Not everyone is going to know Molly is, right? And so we have to weigh that against, there's just only so much space communicating things that are maybe just more, evergreen is not the right word, but just
universal, maybe.
Universal, there it is. Yeah.
Flavor. So, we all like a good Sando.
Yeah. So I think where moments we dial Molly up is obviously on her feed, on our socials, paid ads, just stuff where we have a little bit more control over. It's just not a one and done thing. And that's not to say that we won't put Molly on a billboard or a display down the line. This also just happened to be a very small display. Like there wasn't much, it was just kind of only room for text. So
that's where the real art comes in, though. Like, what are you going to do with the smallest space? And I'm sure you've spent a lot of time thinking about these things, because you are definitely no stranger to the CPG space, to the grocery space, to working at a startup brand. You were literally employee number one at Banza, which is a pasta company that makes pasta from garbanzo beans, or as we call them in Canada, chickpeas. You guys call them garbanzo beans, right?
I call them chickpeas. Yeah, okay, but both. Right. You hear both. Yeah.
And you even let some cameras follow you on your journey through the Banza world in the early days. That's on a documentary called Generation Startup, which is a great watch. Did you know you wanted to work in CPG? Like, how did you end up in this space? This really became this defining thing in your career.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was a crazy first job, and I started there right as we launched, basically the week that we launched. So it was me and the two founders, shout out to Brian and Scott, and I was there for about 5 years. So such an just amazing education in brand, in entrepreneurship, in CPG in particular. But I don't think I always knew I wanted to be in the CPG world. Around when it was time to like start looking for my first job, I always knew that I wanted to just be in food entrepreneurship. And I thought that meant restaurants more so than consumer packaged goods.
You wanted to be poor and tired.
But there was something, a little sexier about the restaurant world than the grocery world. But, my whole family, super food centric. My brother's a chef and a restaurant owner. My parents are incredible cooks. So, I even took a few hospitality classes in college. I was kind of pretty set on that path my senior year of undergrad. And then I think, what drew me to restaurants in general is just that idea of like hospitality, just creating special moments for your patrons is really, it's a great feeling to have. Like I worked in my brother's restaurant for a little bit my senior year of college, and just that feeling of making the customer's day with your product and actually seeing it happen right in front of you was super appealing to me. And, I ended up in the food business, but took a different route, going the CPG marketing route with Banza. But I think I carried a lot of that thinking around hospitality and how hospitality and marketing kind of intersect, and thinking about ways to create, special moments for your customers, and just through maybe a less sexy medium than restaurants.
Yeah. I've been actually reading Unreasonable Hospitality the last few weeks. And, as someone that works in marketing, I am constantly taking notes from the restaurant world that I would want to apply to our marketing clients. There is a really beautiful crossover between them. So I can see that connection for you.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. Well, one of the luxuries of AO and maybe of Banza too is that it's probably a product that you would use on a regular basis. But before AO, post Banza, you were at two brands that maybe wouldn't have Avery Hairston on their persona mood board. So one of them was Sundays, which is a pet food company. Is it specifically dog food, or is it pets?
Yes. Yeah.
And W. So tell me about those two brands, and maybe explain what each of them is, and talk about how you as a CMO approach marketing to an end user who's like really different from you.
Yeah, great question. So just to frame it up, Sundays, dog food company, basically farmer's dog level quality of like human grade ingredients, but air dried so it's shelf stable. So you don't have to like clean up a messy dog bowl. And then W was a creator-led brand also. Jake Paul, one of the Paul brothers, the one that fought Mike Tyson on Netflix, basically started a Gen Z version of Axe body spray. So it was just a whole line of sort of men's body care products targeted to Gen Z, Gen Alpha, essentially, which I'm not. And I'm also not a dog owner. But yeah, I think thinking about the second part of your question, I learned a ton from my mom. Was a marketer as well, and she actually ran marketing for the NFL for a stint in the 90s. And she would always tell me, like, when she took that job, she didn't know what a first down was. She didn't know what any of the teams were. And, would keep coming back to the point of, like, it can actually be a strength to have an outsider's view on how a category works. Like, you kind of come in without any bias. You come in with fresh eyes, and you don't subscribe to any of the existing playbooks. And so you can kind of just write it from scratch and pull in some of the best stuff. So I've taken that mindset with me, and like, I really enjoy working in the food industry, and that's where my passion is. And like, that's, as a customer, I'm a fan of that space, but I always enjoyed, signing up for roles at companies like Sundays and W, because you just get to enter a completely new space and learn a ton. And I think when taking a job like that where you don't know anything, even when you do, I think like the most important thing as a marketer is just listen, like talk to your customers, survey them, interview them, even like go so far as to immerse yourself in the media that they consume. Like for W, my algorithm, my personal algorithm is different than, right? And same with Sundays, right? Like I would go to the length of creating a dummy account and going and following all these different brands and engaging with all this content out there that was dog specific. And you learn so much about sort of what is driving the conversation there. So
that is the beauty of the algorithm nowadays, is you can almost do this self-guided immersion just by creating a dummy account, picking a few strategic brands, and all of a sudden you're immersed in a complete other world. I mean, we should all probably do that to heal the political divides in the world. Get targeted by our, other political leanings for a little while.
Yeah, for sure.
When you look at those two brands, what were some of your like hugest learnings or big moments that you're taking with you?
Yeah, I think for me, for Sundays, that was the first time that I really worked in the D2C space.
Yeah.
And we actually had our own custom built website. So it wasn't on Shopify, which still, it would have been a learning experience with Shopify too. But the fact that we had an engineering team kind of at the center of our product experience, driving decisions on digital product, was a first for me. And they, how engineers and dev teams think in a very regimented way. That's I think kind of polar opposite from how marketers tend to think, but left a big impact on how I sort of just think about business decisions and where to sort of allocate resources. So they had a framework that stuck with me that I think most dev teams would know is the RICE framework, which is reach, impact, cost, and effort. So they would like size up any idea or any pitch from the team of like, hey, we should, change the homepage to whatever, or we should add this to the, unboxing experience, or you should be able to select XYZ in the app to let people know that you're going to skip a week of your subscription, whatever the case may be. We would evaluate it on that framework of like, how many people is it going to reach? How deep will it impact them? How much is it going to cost us? Like just dollars and cents. And then how much time and like human capital are we going to have to allocate to get this done? So it just completely changed the way that I started to think about ideas, pitch ideas, and even like the concept of testing and learning. Like, okay, maybe we don't want to tackle this entire thing because the cost is outrageous, but if we can validate it with a low cost and a low effort and show that if we broaden the reach, it'll have a big impact. So just having that framework, super helpful, especially early in my career. I was such a shiny object syndrome marketer, I think. And so just gives you a better way of prioritizing and importantly, like knowing what you should say no to.
Yeah. I feel like we should all implement that as marketers, that, when our bosses ask us for things that maybe just seem like, maybe this isn't the priority, you just walk them through that framework.
Yeah. No, super helpful for startups, especially when everything is, you're strapped for cash and strapped for people. Like you're trying to do the things that have the biggest impact. So, so simple, but it was just a big takeaway for me from that experience. And then I think from W, so much there. I think one thing that really stuck with me, which was actually our head of creatives line that I'm going to steal here, but I'll shout out to Matt Rogers, is to act like a creator and not a brand. We were creator led, and this was 2 or 3 years ago when we were first sort of building this thing. So now the concept is a little bit, I think, more out there, but just this idea that like traditional brands are sort of slow and polished and maybe more salesy and self-conscious about the brand itself. And on the flip side, precious, that's probably the better word. And, brands or creators are just, they're faster, they're more human, more culturally attuned. And so I think, big takeaway there is like the modern playbook is for brand building is less about perfection and more about cultural presence and personality and all that wrapped up in like speed to market. Like, can you put your idea, okay, great idea, let's get it in action. And I think creators are so great at that in the context of social, especially. Brands are getting much better at it, but I think we're all taking notes from creators and streamers and recipe developers and folks like Jake and Molly. Like they're paved the path, and I think a lot of brands are just trying to model off of that.
Yeah, that is such a good distinction. And as you said, a lot of brands have taken that to heart, but I still see a lot of brands struggling with it. I mean, 10 years ago was the last time I was in-house at a brand. We definitely had creative run through like 5 different sets of eyes before it went out on Instagram. Like everything was vetted. You wanted to see how it looked in the grid. And that model just doesn't work anymore. But sometimes when you're dealing with, creative directors or people that have a real vision, it's hard to convey just like the pace they need to maintain and the value of just like trying things and testing and maybe being a little unhinged sometimes, provided it's like moderately brand aligned, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, layers of approval definitely don't exist in the creator-led brand world, or at least like the ones that are organized the right way. Like it's from idea to concept in market, it's so much faster with creators, I've found.
How do you see that playing out in your world today? Like I'm guessing you have, how many people are on your team at AO?
So we have 3 full-time or four full-time. That's including our CEO and Molly, and then myself and someone who runs our shopper marketing.
You guys have to be pretty scrappy.
Yeah.
Like who's creating the content?
We have an awesome part-time creator that does a lot of the recipe content. She shoots all of Molly's videos. Shout out to Josie. She's basically like half-time for AO. And we have a social chat, me, her, Molly's social person, Ruby, our copywriter, who's also part-time, but she's just kind of like so good with ideas. Just any sort of like crazy idea would go to Ruby. And so that's sort of where we cook up stuff. And then it's like, okay, let's just go get it done. And I think a lot of brands kind of stop at that moment. There's like a few different moments. I think there's a lot of brands that are just afraid to say yes, right? Like they want to do, not on our mood board, but like Liquid Death, for example, is on a lot of people's mood board. And it's like brands want to be Liquid Death until it's time to do Liquid Death shit, and then they get scared. And so I think step 1 is about saying yes to just crazy ideas. And then step 2 is like actually operationalizing them. And so Molly had this idea. We were doing an event last year called Big Weenie Fest, which in and of itself is just absurd and something I don't think most brands would say yes to, that sort of not so subtle euphemism. But Big Weenie Fest is a hot dog and a weenie dog meetup.
Oh my God.
So we serve hot dogs, weenie dogs, and their dog parents come. And we were going to send out a video, like publish a video of Molly like putting up a flyer on a telephone pole. And Molly was like, what if we instead unfurled a 20 or 30 foot, I forget what it ended up being, but it's like a 30-foot banner on top of the LA aqueduct.
Yes.
And that idea was thought of 5 days before and then published like that, same week, right? It's like from idea, we say yes, and then, okay, I don't know how to get a 30-foot banner, but we're going to figure it out. I think that's the speed part that I think a lot of brands miss.
Yeah.
It's just getting it done.
This shocks me every time, and it happens way too often. A new business comes to us with a budget for a campaign. They're putting spend against it. They've already made the media buy. They're so excited for a big launch or maybe their first ever campaign. And when they send me their brand book, all it has is a logo. There's no personality, no perspective, no positioning. That's not a brand. That's a color palette. Before you even think about dropping budget on a campaign, you need to know what you stand for. What white space can you claim? How are you making your customers' lives better? If you don't start from a solid foundation of purpose or some core belief, you are throwing money away on a campaign. Sure, you might see some quick sales, but you're building on sand. There's no foundation, and you'll always be chasing the next sale. Brand building is creating a world and a system of beliefs that the right customers will see themselves in and get attached to. Like any investment, brand building has a long tail and it grows over time. You cannot cut corners. The team at Monday Creative are the brand architects who build that firm foundation with you, pulling out the beliefs that are already there, elevating that gold, and just sprinkling a little bit of Monday magic on top. If you know you need to do some building from the ground up, we'd love to hear from you. Find us at mondaycreative.co. You guys did a really cute, we're recording on April 14th. You guys did a really cute April Fool's Day campaign that I'm guessing probably came up in that Slack chat. Can you tell me what you guys did there?
Yeah, so I dropped the ball totally on April Fool's. It was like...
It sneaks up on you.
I know, right? And you're like, we don't really need to do it this year, and there's more important fish to fry, and you're thinking about the reach and the impact and the cost and all that Rice framework stuff. And then you're like, oh man, everybody's doing it. So Maybelline mascara, we had the idea to just call it Mayobeline and make it our products that you're supposed to put in your eyelashes to give them, more volume and more shine.
And flavor.
More flavor. Exactly. So, someone on our team, I think actually Harry Hill, he's a writer that's a friend of Molly's social media manager, had the idea in conversation with her. And then Molly's social person, Simona, drops that idea in the chat. It's an instant yes. And then it's like, okay, how do we actually turn this idea into reality? And I think the step that we take, which in the context of April Fools, like most brands just do a digital render, right? And it's like, how do you push it the extra mile to just resonate a little bit more with your concept? And so we actually went and got labels made and mascara bottle, like little tubes purchased on Amazon, and wrapped the tubes up and filled it with our mayo. So it's like brings it into this real and tactile experience that, especially in this sort of age of AI, I think like going the extra mile with something human like that is super important. So that idea too came together less than a week from concept to going live, which it's more my fault for not preparing, but I'm proud of the team for that one.
Speaking of like the really human non-AI, the actual like thumb stopper, I think in that campaign wasn't even the mascara tubes. It was the like yellow orange close up of Molly's lashes, which I'm assuming was not actually AO on her lashes, but I could be wrong. But it was like it kind of breaks your rhythm if you're not expecting that from Molly. Like you managed to find a way to tell the story in a way that instantly makes you stop and go like, this isn't what I'm used to seeing.
Totally. Yeah. Molly nailed the beauty routine, get ready with me bit.
Get ready with mayo.
Get ready with mayo. There you go. And I think nobody expects that from her, that sort of like beauty influencer shtick.
Yeah.
But she just, she could be an actress. Like that was Oscar-worthy performance, but not trying to sell the bit too hard. Like it wasn't in the front of that, right? It like kind of led you there. And then she went back to the rest of the beauty routine. It was just like so deadpan, so confident. And I think that's what people really respect, brands that just that show up in a confident way and aren't trying too hard, I think is a big takeaway there. But yeah, you got to think about what's going to stop the scroll, sadly, in our marketing world these days.
Totally. I mean, you talked about the really comprehensive target rollout? Obviously, there are these moments where you're following a more traditional playbook, but it does seem like maybe you've picked up from your D2C days and your days working with Jake Paul, the value of just like those special marketing moments that you have to jump on. What do you think is the role that, I think I heard you use the term like set piece marketing moments. What is the role of those in the bigger like sphere of a marketing strategy?
I think they're kind of like today's version of campaigns. I think when I think of campaigns, I think of basically everything up until this most recent age of marketing where, yes, there are still campaigns today, but campaigns are like these omni-channel, drawn out, high investment. Set pieces are like, all right, let's just try and have a moment that resonates on social, that overused word, and I cringe to even say it, but like something that can go viral, right? And it's just like a home run swing with not a home run budget and doing it in a way that's like really resonant with your audience. So I think one example for us that maybe is easy to just talk about something in particular is for AO, we gifted Molly last year a Mayo phone case. So we took the cultural cue of the Rode phone case that Hailey Bieber launched with like the little lip gloss in the pocket, and we flipped it in a way that I think our audience really resonated with, because putting mayo in something that's like a beauty-oriented thing is particularly subversive and funny. It's like you can care about the beauty and the aesthetics of all, like we're just going to go ham on this sandwich and like talk about mayonnaise and be passionate about mayonnaise.
Which is part of Molly's charm, as like actually how much she loves sauce and mortadella and a sandwich.
Yeah, totally.
This like very attractive woman who just loves to like go ham on a sandwich.
Right. That's well said. So I think, again, going the extra mile of not just rendering it, but like producing it with a fabrication shop and gifting it to Molly, capturing the sort of real reaction, total surprise for her on her birthday. That to me embodies like what a set piece is, instead of like, we're going to launch it and we're going to buy out of home and we're going to it's just like quick, culturally relevant, kind of transient in the moment, but that's okay. But like really resonates with your audience. And we showed the behind the scenes production of it. We showed the making of it, like the reaction that Molly had. It was just like not polished. And I think that's what set pieces are too, is just not overly polished, but polished in a way too. They're like polished so they don't look too polished.
Yeah, it's like the thing, you know, the phone case has to look polished, but the content maybe doesn't have to look polished.
Exactly.
Yeah, you couldn't just like jimmy together something and be like, look, we made this for you. It has to actually look the part and fit the little sachet and to have the desired effect.
Yeah, totally.
I'm curious if you know this, and I think you probably do. How important is virality to retail sales? Like, what is the tie between a viral moment? If you have a post that just goes off or some product that just goes off on social, at what point do you see it in sales, or do you see it in sales?
I think it's so hard to measure that acutely. Like, definitely easier in D2C to know, okay, this ad is a workhorse ad for us, and it's so trackable. I think with retail, someone should invent this sort of product, but like digital product. But I've always found it's hard to just be able to track, okay, we did this thing, it had this impact. There are certain things that do, right? Like on a Good Morning America or a CBS Sunday Morning, like those are marketing moments where you can instantly see the sales impact, and you see web traffic spike, and you see branded search spike on Google that month. Like there are moments like that, but I think the brand awareness and sort of sales that come from that, just getting more people into the funnel, aren't spiking with viral moments. They're like...
Is it a longer, slower build?
Longer, slower build that's like the slope of that build is nudged up in ways that you can't really perceive on a month-to-month basis.
Yeah.
But on a year-to-year basis, doing things like that like break through in culture, I think. And when I say breakthrough in culture, like in our little corner of the internet, right, for where the like digital watering hole of people that care about our brands are, that then you start to shift that curve in a way that pays dividends, I think, down the line. But rarely are you going to see, that campaign that went super viral, like you're going to see it in the data that, yeah. At the budgets that I'm operating at.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are plenty of marketers out there at bigger brands that can spend a lot more, that can see a lot more than I can.
I mean, you just can't underestimate the value of a built-in following on social when you're dealing with modest budgets, right? That really gets you way further reach. And maybe that's a good transition to talk about this idea of creator-led brands or influencer-led brands. You've worked at two very different audiences. And, I don't know much about Jake Paul other than that he fought Mike Tyson. I didn't even know there were two of them until literally 20 minutes ago when you mentioned Warner Brothers. That's how little I know about him. But my suspicion is he has vastly more followers than Molly even. Is that fair to say?
Yes. I mean, just numbers wise, he has 60 million plus, I think. It's crazy. I think what's special about Molly's following is Jake's following is more in that sort of teen / preteen young guy. And Molly's following is more in that sort of 18 to 50 range, I want to say, and like skews more female. So I think the person that's purchasing AO is Molly's fan base.
Yeah.
To start, and then we'll grow beyond that. The person that's purchasing, the customer that's purchasing your 12-year-old's first deodorant is not following Jake Paul.
Yeah.
The consumer, the end consumer is. The mom is not a Jake Paul fan. And so I think there's following, and then there's the sort of power of that influence. And I think Molly has outsized influence.
Yeah. And her follower, not only is her follower the buyer, but it's a buyer that has a lot of buying power. It's like, probably like largely coastal professional women who, aren't afraid to spend money on food that they are going to enjoy a lot. Okay. That's a really good comparison. Okay. So bringing it back, when you're thinking about working with an influencer or creator-led brand, what's the balance of building brand around the influencer versus around the product versus around something more traditional like a brand story? How much, we talked about this a little bit at the top with the Target launch, how much dependence can it have on an individual? How much dependence should it have on the individual? And like, should you have a secondary brand story to bring to life?
I think you absolutely need a secondary brand story. And I think Molly and Jake both share this opinion. I think the smartest sort of business-minded creators that are launching their own brands know this, that like you can't just slap your name on something and it's an instant success. Like the product and the brand have to earn their keep, just like every other.
Unless you're Mr. Beast, maybe.
Unless you're Mr. Beast, but like, there's product story to Feastables that I think, again, not for me, but like there's a ethical chocolate sourcing story that's being told there that I think helps make maybe the primary customer in mom feel good about buying something that their kid is really passionate about wanting. And it's sort of, for a lot of those brands, it's this, there's like the mullet approach where it's like the reverse mullet. It's like party in the front, business in the back. It's like, how do you create products and brands that can speak to both mom and, young consumer? But I think it's just really important. One, for the brand to last, the product needs to be good, both to get that initial fan base that's going to say yes to whatever the creator promotes, to buy it a second time. They're not going to buy it a second time if it's not a good product.
Yeah.
And then I think the brand and the product need to be able to speak to people who don't know who the creator is. And I think when you're in 4,000 plus Walmarts or 2,000 plus Target stores, like most of those shoppers don't know either creator.
Yeah.
Right? It's just there's so many people shopping in those stores. And so I like to call it escape velocity. Like the brand has to reach escape velocity from its initial creator to be able to stand on its own.
Yeah.
So you have to build with intentionality around who got you to the party. But at the same time, you need to think about what the brand's going to look like in 2-3 years when it's not as heavily reliant on the founder. And I feel that way about founder-led brands just as much as I feel it about creator-led brands. So yeah, it's a balance. But I think for AO right now, like we also there's so much to Molly's brand that's such a perfect fit for AO. And like I mentioned at the top of the interview, the fact that she's basically our head of product and our head of brand because she knows this space so well and knows culinary so well, I think we'll be step for step with her, maybe a little bit longer than like a celebrity backed brand that's just a launch campaign and kind of a founder led, but it's not really led by the celebrity.
She also has like this established rhythm of making wonderful food videos, and it's such an easy sell for, like, it just fits
Totally
with the stuff she's already doing.
Yeah. I mean, and is top of class at that.
So you've worked now at very retail first brands like I think W and Bonza. You've worked at a total D2C brand, Sundays. Yeah. Is AO a little bit of both, mainly grocery, but do you have some D2C or is it all grocery?
Surprisingly solid D2C business, especially in the first year, just because of you just don't expect people to buy mayonnaise online, but they're doing it.
Yeah, they come in that great box, you know.
Yeah, there you go. But I think as you know, we're into more stores, retail will become more and more a piece of that pie, and ultimately, like that's where the business will succeed. But I think you asked what the differences are between.
Well, yeah, like if you're thinking as a marketer, what are the shifts that you need to make when you move from one to the other?
I think, there's just like obviously some just platform specific stuff of what you've got your eyes on the ball for, whether it's, with D2C, it's ROAS and CAC, and with retail, it's velocities. But I think, a lot of the same principles of brand building and pushing people through a funnel, just maybe different tactics are dialed up more than others. But I think the speed of learning is definitely a different curve in retail than it is in D2C. Like D2C, it's instant. It's super granular, highly attributable marketing spend. In retail, it's a little delayed. It's that old expression of like, I forget exactly what it is, like 50% of my marketing is working. I'm just not sure which.
Yeah. In some ways, it's more forgiving. It's like you have more time to try things probably without needing immediate results.
Yeah, totally. And then I think the level of control too, like in D2C, you kind of control your own destiny end to end, like the entire experience is yours. And retail, there's just a lot of nuances, like the retail influences placement, they influence pricing, they influence promos, your shopping experience is right next shoulder to shoulder with your competitor, not on this like beautiful site that's tells your whole story. So there's a few just things that are kind of fundamental to brick and mortar versus .com that I think impact the way that you need to approach like certain tactics, whether it be packaging or messaging on pack or stuff like that. But I think in this day and age though, like a lot of retail first marketing borrows from D2C tactics, right? Yep. Like influencers are driving people to Target and to Whole Foods the same way that they're driving people to buy, subscription dog food. And then I think D2C eventually goes omni-channel. They just hit a CAC ceiling.
Yeah, you kind of have to, it seems, in this day and age. Do you
Yeah.
spend a lot of time in grocery aisles these days?
Not as much as I used to, but definitely anytime I go grocery shopping, which is a weekly occurrence, I enjoy it still, but I'm like, oh, what are they doing? What are they up to? I'm taking more.
I'm like, is your phone full of photos.
Yeah, mostly. Mostly. But used to live in a grocery store and do a lot of product demos. Thankfully, we have a really awesome brand ambassador team right now. So
Nice.
thankfully in store, maybe half as much as I used to be back in my Bonza days.
Yeah. Okay, one more question about your AO world before we kind of reel back and look higher level. If I'm not mistaken, you're in New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Molly's in LA. It's a very LA-based brand, and the content creation is happening mostly in LA from what I can tell. Distributed teams are very much the norm these days, but how do you make that work when your team's fully on the other coast and like a very LA-coded brand?
Yeah, I think remote work is just I don't know, just how it is these days. Like I kind of, it's been so long. I haven't worked really in like an office since 2019, honestly, pre-pandemic.
So it doesn't really matter that you're on different coasts.
Yeah, it's definitely really awesome to be in person, and we make a habit of like, LA trips and New York trips as a team, but I think we've built a pretty great muscle of like asynchronous work. There's just so many tools now that kind of support creative production, and me on set, you don't need me on set. We're going to be the worst cook and the worst filmer and the one with the least creative ideas. So I think it's good that I'm on a different coast.
Fair.
but yeah, it's the brand has an LA big part to its DNA for sure. But I think as we grow, like we're gonna reach, I think with Target especially, just more of the sort of the coast, the middle of the country. Everybody eats sandwiches,
It's true. Yeah. Especially in New York.
Everybody needs mayo.
Everybody needs mayo. Okay, we were talking about your camera roll being full of potentially photos of grocery aisles. What else are you screenshotting? What are the brands that you look up to, admire the most, or like regularly referencing as inspo?
I think generally, and I think this is true of like the AO team too, is we take a lot of cues from heritage brands. They just have this authenticity that you can't fake and are just really great. But I'm talking about heritage brands, but also like the ads that they used to do back in the day and the aesthetics that they used to have back in the day that you just don't really see anymore. And so trying to chase that feeling and imbue that into AO, we just take so many cues from like the vintage diner experience. And so like, what did the old Heinz ads look like and the old Kraft ads, and just like big food back when CPG marketing was like in its first heyday, we take a lot of notes from. And then, just because it's so recent, I think a brand that nailed that from a heritage standpoint is the Masters. Like they have just been obsessively consistent about building a super distinct aesthetic world that we don't have to touch on, because I'm sure your listeners aren't as golf obsessed as I am. But
well, I don't know. I love that. You were before we recorded, you were mentioning that you had spent the weekend watching the Masters. Tell me what it is that they're doing, because we're not. I'm not. What can we learn from them?
So, I think a few things, like some examples of things that they do that I think then like kind of speak to maybe broader themes or like strategies. Like they hand paint. So green is a big color for them, obviously. Shocker, on a golf course. But green is like part of their core color system, and they will hand paint the curbs of the driveways leading up to with the right perfect Pantone color, right? So it's just like this obsessive consistency that I think, they have manual scoreboards. They prohibit any phones on on the grounds. So you see all these pictures of historic moments in sports of the last 10 years, and it's like everybody has their phone out.
Yeah.
Right? Like the whole crowd. And then you look at photos from the Masters, and it's just everyone is like so engaged and watching it and living it. And it's that sort of commitment to certain rules and rituals that I think they say no to a lot of things. That they don't sell. They have very limited sponsorships, super limited attendance. You can't buy merch online. Like they build scarcity, they build a distinct brand world, and they have these rituals. And they're just so true to themselves. And the tagline is a tradition like any other. And they are committed to that. And I think when brands commit and don't chase, they're rewarded. And so, I admire the heritage of it and the focus and the commitment to the bit that they have going.
That is such a brilliant contrast. I love that you broke that down in that way. The other thing that everyone was watching this weekend was Coachella. And we've all in our office been talking about how specific. I mean, I think this has probably been happening ever since Beyonce did Coachella, but it was so much more present this year. Coachella was actually not built for the crowd in the audience this year. It was built for streaming services. Like they completely, turned it into this production. And I think you probably had a better experience if you were watching it remotely than if you were there because of the camera work and the angles. And, I'm sure watching Justin Bieber on his laptop in the audience was not the most compelling experience, but when you're like seeing it on a screen and the camera is capturing it, so it's like two opposite, but really knowing their audience.
But I have a few friends that went and just said that the Bieber concert was like one of the best things that they've ever seen, like in person. But it's interesting that I didn't know that they shifted to streaming it. I mean, I'm not surprised, but that's interesting. I think the Bieber thing though is another great example of like an inspiring, like where I'm drawing inspiration from. I think rather look at creators and artists typically than at brands. Mm-hmm. I think just because they're always doing the way more compelling creative work than brands are.
And faster, as you've pointed out.
And faster, right? And I think Justin's concert with the laptop and sort of super stripped down, super, lo-fi in a way, and confident because it wasn't trying to do too much. I think there's just a lot to learn from that, from brands. And there's a lot more interesting stuff there too, with like the music owning rights of why he didn't play his old stuff, but he did like duets with the YouTube video and that I was reading about. So he's super, super savvy, and just the way that he's showing up artistically, I think you're going to see the ripple effect of that influence on other pieces of creative, be it music or, brand work.
Great analysis. I should have you on as a regular. This is great. Okay, I have two more questions for you, Avery. The first one is, what is coming down the line from AO that we should be watching out for?
A lot of interesting stuff that I can't reveal at the moment, unfortunately. But, new products, new flavors, big partnerships are all in the works. I think it's going to be a fun year, but I can't, unfortunately, reveal any secrets.
I love a partnership. I'll get you back in a year to talk about how all those things rolled out. Last question is, what's the best piece of brand or marketing advice that you've ever received?
I think back to my old boss at Bonza, who would just hammer home the idea of show, don't tell. Like, it's super easy to say something, much harder and way more believable and way more memorable to just do it. Do the thing that you're trying to say. So like for AO, I can tell you that it's delicious. I can tell you that the flavors are bold, but I think just showing how it's used and how people are reacting to it and making the content super mouth-watering is going to be way more believable than just telling you that it's delicious, right? And so it's true for every brand, is like, don't tell people that you're cool. That's kind of the golden rule of being cool, is you don't say that you're cool. Same deal for brands. It's like, don't hammer just show it. Don't tell it.
Amen. Great. Perfect note to end on. Avery, thank you so much. I learned a lot.
Yeah.
That was Avery Hairston, VP of Marketing at AO. Thanks for hanging out with us on My Best Campaign. We are deep into recording for the rest of this season, but we're still booking guests. If you're a CMO or a VP of marketing at a consumer-facing brand, or if you know one who would be a great guest, just get in touch. My email is amanda@monday.creative.co. My Best Campaign is brought to you by Monday Creative. This episode was produced by Emily Heibeck and hosted by me, Amanda Lee Smith. Our sound engineer is Andrew Bagasbas, and our theme music is by Shimon Machida.